of the Islamic Development Bank Group are coming. We kindly ask you to take your seats, please. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, we kindly ask you to take your seats because our event is about to start. And before we start, I would like to inform you that we have a simultaneous interpretation channels in 3 languages. Number 1 is Arabic, 2 is English, and 3 is Russian. Also, please note that we have a live streaming through YouTube, and more than 1,000 participants have registered to attend physically and virtually. We would also like to draw your kind attention that we have an overflow room at Hilton Ballroom as a warm-up. This is a short infographic video clip before we all go to our today's program. Hope you enjoy watching it.
Especially for countries with poor infrastructure. Investing in developing and upgrading infrastructure is imperative for attracting foreign direct investment.
No sustainable development today could take place without the participation in the international trade.
The whole idea of having all of these institutions signing together today a memorandum of understanding is to connect them all together.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Nilufar Satubaldeva and I am honored to be your MC today. Glad to welcome all of you to Islamic Development Bank Group Private Sector Forum. Through this forum, we will highlight the ISDB Group private sector entities, ISIC, ICD, and ITFC, and their response to the pandemic of COVID-19, the support provided for the development of the private sector, and share perspectives of the ICDB Group's private sector entities in the CIS region. The forum will also shed a light on investment and trade opportunities in Uzbekistan and how the three entities, ISIC, ICD and ITFC roles complement each other in providing solutions and activities that serve member countries' needs through the three key pillars: investment, trade and insurance. Not only that, the forum is expected to be a unique platform to networking and establishing business relations and partnerships, connecting business communities in member states by arranging parallel B2B and B2G scheduled meetings. Also, we would like to draw your attention that you can connect through the B2B and B2G platform available on the forum website. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, blessings will always be there in listening to verses of the Holy Quran recited by Imam Abdurazak of Habibullah.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الذين قالوا ربنا الله ثم استقاموا تتنزل عليهم الملائكة ألا تخافوا ولا تحزنوا وأبشروا بالجنة التي كنتم توعدون نحن أولياؤكم في الحياة الدنيا وفي الآخرة ولكم فيها ما تشتهي أنفسكم ولكم فيها ما تدعون نزلا من غفور رحيم ومن أحسن قولا ممن دعا إلى الله وعمل صالحا وقال إنني من المسلمين صدق الله العظيم.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, I am honored to invite now His Excellency Sardor Omurzakov, Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Investments and Foreign Trade of the Republic of Uzbekistan, and Chairman of ICDB Board of Governors. Please welcome His Excellency Sardor Omurzakov.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Your Excellency, Dr. Muhammad Suleiman Al-Jasir, distinguished guests, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. As the Chairman of the Board of Governors of the Islamic Development Bank, and on behalf of the Government of the Republic of Uzbekistan, I am pleased to welcome you all in Tashkent. We highly value the hard work and dedication of the IsDB's team, headed by His Excellency the President Al-Jassir, to make this annual meeting happen. I would also like to take this opportunity to express my special gratitude to all the heads of delegations and participants of the event for your visit to Uzbekistan despite all the challenges of the COVID in the modern world. It is deeply symbolic that among all the international financial institutions, the IsDB is the first one to host an event of a such scale in a face-to-face format since the pandemic started. I'm confident that it will serve as a wake-up call for all others. It's time to get to work. The pandemic is like a chess, dear colleagues. We can't just sit back and wait for the right opportunity to make a move. It is important to be able to properly analyze the current situation and act on it. Today, the aggregate economies of the Islamic Development Bank member countries are making an important contribution to the growth of the world economy. With a total population of 1.8 billion, member countries' share of global GDP is about 16%. Our economies grew 4.1% last year, which is faster than the world average. And the growth in the next 3 years is projected at 4.2% per annum, which is higher than the world average forecast of 3.5%. It is necessary not only to maintain this pace, but also to exceed it. In today's post-COVID era, competition for investment and markets is inevitable, and it is important to be ready for it. The Private Sector Day Forum is very important in order to create new links and new points of growth, re-establish existing relationships between more than 1,000 private sector representatives who are participating today in the events of the IsDB Board of Governors annual meeting. Dear friends, since 2017, under the leadership of the President of the Republic of Uzbekistan, His Excellency Shavkat Mirziyoyev, we have launched comprehensive reforms towards creating and enabling market-based economy. Let me highlight very briefly some of them. First, we removed all restrictions on the repatriation of profits and the conversion of national currency. Problems that previously held investors back have turned to a thing of the past. Second, on August 20th this year, very recently, for the first time in our history, a direct dialogue between His Excellency the President of Uzbekistan and entrepreneurs and businessmen was held in order to identify issues and problems, find solutions, as well as develop practical proposals and initiatives to improve the business environment and investment climate in our country. More than 10,000 businessmen attended that event, and as a result, I would say revolutionary decisions were made with regard to financing of private sector, simplification of business procedures, improvement of the tax system and tax administration, and of course, infrastructure development. This is just the beginning. The 20th of August is declared in Uzbekistan officially as the Day of Entrepreneurs. Every year, His Excellency the President will hold a direct dialogue and meeting with the country's business representatives. Third, the decree of the President of the Republic of Uzbekistan on the introduction of a transparent, market-based land allocation procedure came into force from the 1st August this year. This initiative will allow to allocate land plots to the private sector, both on the basis of the right of ownership and lease, for the entrepreneurs to turn them into an object of purchase and sale. Fourth, we have launched a privatization program under which state-owned stakes in major companies and commercial banks of Uzbekistan are put up for sale. The number of enterprises with state participation in the next 2 years will be reduced at least by 3 times. Fifth, today in Uzbekistan, the powers of executive authorities are being gradually transferred to the parliament. Decisions should not be made by the government officials, but by a well-functioning, impartial system that will follow the interests of citizens, businessmen and society. Sixth, the gradual democratization of the society is one of the priorities of our long-term, pragmatic, people-oriented policies. Uzbekistan has embarked on an unquestionable path of radical reforms aimed at building a democratic state and a just society, where the priority is the implementation of the principle, which is the interests of the people are above all. We guarantee that we will not deviate from the principles of a free market economy, rule of law, and a rights-based society. Dear participants of the event, it is encouraging to note that the reforms we are implementing are getting wide recognition from the international community and are yielding practical results. Despite the negative consequences of the pandemic and decline in dynamics of development in most countries of the world, Uzbekistan's economy maintained 1.6% growth in 2020 and achieved 6.2% growth in the first half of this year. Even the volume of foreign direct investments flow during 2020 revealed positive dynamics as compared to 2019. The JP Morgan predicts 6.3% growth of the GDP of Uzbekistan next year. For the first time in our history, Uzbekistan was elected as a member of the United Nations Human Rights Council and ranked 44th in the International Open Data Index, climbing 125 positions. This motivates us to continue making every effort to achieve even more ambitious long-term goals. Dear ladies and gentlemen, there are many opportunities for foreign companies in areas such as oil, gas, petrochemicals, mining, agriculture, textiles, leather, pharmaceuticals, and many, many others. First, the oil, gas, and petrochemical sectors are among the most promising. They account for about 15% of the country's total GDP today. Uzbekistan has 265 oil and gas fields. The country is among the top 15 countries in the world in terms of natural gas production. More than 108,000 highly qualified specialists are employed in this sector. We invite partners in joint projects to intensify gas production, exploration, production of chemical products with high added value. Second, the mining industry is among the fastest growing in the country. Uzbekistan is one of the world's largest producers of gold and copper. More than 100 tons of gold are mined annually in our country, and more than 150,000 tons of copper. We invite foreign companies to invest in joint projects for processing copper and other non-ferrous metals and take advantage of the unique benefits of Uzbekistan's mining and other industries. Third, many of you are aware of Uzbekistan's considerable agricultural potential. In the coming years, we intend to develop more than 1 million hectares of agricultural land, increase the average yield by 2 times, create additional capacities for processing 3.5 million tons of agricultural products, and raise the figures and indicators of processed products to 30%. Fourth, the textile and leather industries are also strategically important sectors of our economy. Today, there are more than 7,000 textile companies in the country. Production in the textile and leather industries is growing at an annual rate of about 20%, and exports are growing even faster. Fifth, our priority in the pharmaceutical industry is to localize production of medicines. In the next 5 years, we set a goal to increase the share of national produced medicines from current 45% to 70%. To this end, 8 pharmaceutical-free zones have been created in Uzbekistan, whose residents are exempt from taxes and customs duties. I will not enumerate other industries, dear colleagues. I would like to point out that Uzbekistan's diversified economic structure allows us to cooperate with foreign companies in absolutely any kind of directions and any kind of sectors of our economy. Dear ladies and gentlemen, the main objective of today's event is to foster direct business contacts, new companies, new deals, new technologies, new jobs. This is the algorithm we try to construct to achieve our common long-term development goals. I've said algorithm, and I remembered that the word itself comes from the surname Al-Khwarizmi, who was our ancestor who actually invented algebra and algorithm. The government of Uzbekistan, for its part, is ready to work literally 24/7 to create a comfortable, favorable business environment. Taking this opportunity, I want to invite you to participate in the dynamic transformations of the new Uzbekistan. We are ready to provide all possible support to the business community, including foreign business partners and investors in their initiatives and projects. I encourage all business representatives to work actively during this week. I wish all the participants productive negotiations and establishment of long-term business contacts. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Ladies and gentlemen, now I am very delighted to welcome His Excellency Dr. Muhammad Al-Jasser, Chairman of the Islamic Development Bank Group, to deliver his welcoming remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome His Excellency Dr. Muhammad Al-Jasser.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أفضل الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. Mr. Deputy Prime Minister, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It is indeed an immense pleasure to welcome you to the Islamic Development Bank Group Private Sector Forum. Meeting in person for the first time in over 1.5 years truly represents a milestone. So I thank the government of Uzbekistan for hosting our annual meetings under these challenging circumstances. This forum will highlight the activities of the Islamic Development Bank Group's 3 private sector entities, whose goal is to enhance the private sector's contribution to the economies of our member countries. I am particularly proud that all 3 entities have activities in Uzbekistan and the wider CIS region. Today's forum will provide a unique opportunity for businesses, finance, and government representatives to connect and explore business opportunities. And the Deputy Prime Minister's speech, I think, leaves no ambiguity about where Uzbekistan is going. I am thrilled to hear all the reforms that have been implemented, and I'm sure the business people in this hall are going to heed your call and take advantage of it, because that's the name of the game for business. The programs of the private sector entities are an integral part of the IDB's group $2.3 billion strategic preparedness and response program designed to respond to the COVID-19 induced economic downturn in our member countries. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, by way of introduction, allow me to highlight the global macroeconomic situation in the post-pandemic world. COVID-19 has plunged the world into a deep recession. While the IMF expects global GDP to rebound by 6% in 2021, recovery is regrettably uneven because weaker economies and the poorer segments of the world's population were particularly hard hit. The same holds true for our member countries, since many are among the least developed nations. Our member countries also have very young populations. However, youth unemployment stands at 26.7% across the world, which means it's much worse in our regions. The private sector is instrumental in creating sustainable jobs to give our youth the hope they need. However, the combined GDP of the ISDB member countries, which is anticipated to exceed $7.3 trillion, should provide an opportunity for intra-regional trade and investment flows. Despite the 1.7% drop in 2020, our economists project that during 2021, the GDP in our member countries will grow by 4.4%. And I am very happy also to note, the Deputy Prime Minister said that Uzbekistan has already exceeded those numbers. So we need such news. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Prime Minister. Excellencies and distinguished guests, allow me to introduce our private sector entities in some detail. The Islamic Corporation for the Insurance of Investment and Export Credit, ISEC, has a 27-year proven track record in providing Sharia-compliant commercial credit and investment reinsurance, as well as guarantees for projects. It aims to mobilize capital to enhance sustainability and the SDGs. Since its inception, ISEC has provided around $78 billion worth of export credit and political and project insurance and reinsurance. Out of that, $2.6 billion went to the CIS countries. ISEC has enjoyed Moody's highest possible rating, AA3, with a stable outlook for over 14 consecutive years. The Islamic Corporation for the Development of the Private Sector, ICD, has extensive Sharia-compliant financing offerings, such as financing lines, term financings, equity funding, asset management, and sukuk advisory services. ICD also focuses on sustainability and the SDGs primarily by providing liquidity to SMEs and the SMEs, which are an indispensable sector to job creation. Throughout its history, ICD has approved more than $6.8 billion for nearly 500 projects in its member countries. ICD has been very active in the CIS countries, directly and indirectly, investing more than $600 million mainly in Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Azerbaijan, and Tatarstan. The International Islamic Trade Finance Corporation, ITFC, was established with the primary objective of advancing trade among our member countries. It offers integrated trade solutions, including Sharia-compliant trade finance, trade development programs, and training and capacity-building services to government entities and the private sector. Since 2008, ITFC has provided more than $55 billion of financing to OIC member countries, making it the leading provider of trade solutions in these geographies. In the CIS region, ITFC has extended more than $1.2 billion worth of trade finance to support public entities, corporations, and SMEs. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, all the entities, ISEC, ICD, and ITFC act as catalysts. Every dollar invested by them supports or brings about more activity and investment by the private sector. Lastly, the Islamic Development Bank Group's Business Forum, FIQA, is a group initiative that promotes cross-border investment and trade among member countries. It is ready to facilitate contact between the IDB group and private sector firms in member countries. I invite you to take advantage of the collective know-how represented here today. Your contributions matter because you all influence the development of the private sector ecosystems in your respective countries. The private sector has a massive role to play in rebooting the economies, creating needed jobs, and building back better in the post-pandemic world. Thank you very much, and I look forward to hearing all the contributions. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, dear participants. And before we proceed to our panel sessions, I'm inviting you to watch a short video on the ICDB Group private sector entities' response to COVID-19. All your attention to the screen, please.
The COVID-19 pandemic has changed our world, forcing an unprecedented response from influential organizations around the world. One such organization is the Islamic Development Bank, ISDB. In April 2020, our Board of Executive Directors approved $2.3 billion for our Strategic Preparedness and Response Program, putting member countries back on the path towards economic recovery in a strategy we call 3Rs: Respond, Restore, and Restart. The ISDB Group's private sector entities have been pivotal in delivering this program and supporting those most in need within our member countries. The Islamic Corporation for the Insurance of Investment and Export Credit, ISIC, has worked tirelessly to make its full suite of insurance solutions available, ensuring supply chains are intact and the health and livelihoods of citizens in our member countries are protected. ISIC provided insurance coverage amounting to $643 million to support the efforts of member countries in combating the pandemic. ISIC collaborated with Islamic Development Bank, ISDB, to create the COVID-19 Guarantee Facility, CGF, and the ISIC-ISFD COVID-19 Emergency Response Initiative, ISERI, to sustain core strategic value chains, including crucial supplies to the healthcare and food sectors, as well as vaccine procurement. Matching these incredible endeavors has been the Islamic Corporation for the Development of the Private Sector, ICD, who has allocated $250 million to help in the fight against COVID-19, directed in key areas. Working closely with over 100 local and regional financial institutions and providing lines of finance to provide access to funding for SMEs and support private sector businesses. Extending infrastructure financing to provide critical support for the healthcare, energy and agribusiness sectors, and developing an emergency plan to provide support for our investee companies and other financial institutions. the International Islamic Trade Finance Corporation, ITFC, as part of its Rapid Response Initiative, provided $605 million trade financing to support key sectors of OIC member countries. ITFC also designed trade development and technical assistance programs to support key sectors such as the food security and health resilience. The ITFC has made an additional $387 million available to local banks in their efforts to support the recovery of SMEs and private sector clients. While we can take pride in our response, we know this is only the beginning. We remain unwavering in our dedication to safeguarding the people of our member countries in the face of the pandemic and supporting their sustained success for generations to come.
A very impressive video. Thank you very much. Now, dear participants, here we go. We will start the first panel discussion, which will shed light on the role of the IsDB Group private sector entities under the 3 R's approach: respond, restore, and restart, to support the member countries. And once again, I would like to draw your attention to the screen. The moderator for this session is the CEO of the Shape Knowledge Services, Dr. Abdulkader Thomas. I'm inviting Dr. Abdulkader to join the stage. Also, I would like to invite His Excellency Mr. Shukrat Vafayev, Deputy Minister of Investment and Foreign Trade of the Republic of Uzbekistan. Mr. Otabek Nazirov, CEO of Uzbekistan Direct Investments Fund. His Excellency Dr. Mahmoud Muhyiddin, Executive Director, International Monetary Fund. Mr. Osama Kaisi, CEO of the Islamic Corporation for the Insurance of Investment and Export Credit, ISIC. Engineer Hani Salim Sunbul, CEO of the International Islamic Trade Finance Corporation. And Mr. Ayman Sejini, CEO of the Islamic Corporation for the Development of the Private Sector, ICD.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters. Thank you for joining us today. I would like to just pick up on a couple of small gems from both His Excellency, the Deputy Prime Minister, and His Excellency, Dr. Mohammed Al-Jasser, Chairman of the IsDB Group. And I think one of the really critical factors for this moment is to talk about the algorithm that His Excellency brought up. It's speaking about moving now to the restart opportunity of the 3R approach. And here we have today the opportunity face-to-face for the first time in 18 months to actually establish those new links and to pick up on the catalyst that His Excellency, the chairman of the group, brought up. And so without further ado, I'd like to begin with a few questions for our panel, after which they would like to share some impressions about their work, and then we would like to carry on with question and answer from yourselves before concluding our panel, hopefully within about an hour and 15 minutes. And so we have with us Mr. Atabak Nazirov, who is the replacement for the Deputy Minister. And I'd like to start by asking him, in his roles, he has two important roles, both for the foreign investment and business panels here in the country. What are some of the opportunities that ISDB member countries can face here in Uzbekistan, and how can they take advantage of your resources to enjoy building better links?
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Uzbekistan. I will be replacing Mr. Shuhrat Afayev. Apologies for short change in notice. To answer your question, I think Uzbekistan, as was described earlier by His Excellency Deputy Prime Minister, Mr. Sardar Murzakov, is going through a really unprecedented changes at the time. And giving the strategic location of Uzbekistan in Central Asia and in general in the territory of Eurasia, the willingness of the leadership of the country and of the business community to integrate, reverse its course on opening up to its immediate borders and neighbors, providing infrastructure linkages, and putting its historical significance back on the map of the region. I think it's really important to locate, to unlock potential of the Central Asian region for trade of goods and services, for movement of capital and investments. It's extremely important that the efficiencies when it comes to movements of goods and capital across the region become a top of priority. So the linkages with the northern border countries, countries to the east, west, hopefully to the south, I think would provide significant opportunity on infrastructure investments, power and energy. We have substantial resources, natural resources in the country. And with a population of nearly 35 million people, Uzbekistan is the largest market in Central Asia, with a young population of under 30 years on the average. We provide, I think, in the GDP per capita of about $1,700 per person. I think every investor or every financier or business person can understand where is the potential. Our GDP is approximately $60 billion. In my opinion, if all goes well and if we continue with the reform, we can probably quadruple that in 5-7 year time. And that obviously will require a substantial amount of investment in the infrastructure projects, logistics, industrial. Uzbekistan is also doing a lot of work to ensure that we straighten our manufacturing capabilities to localize production and be able to serve markets domestically. Let me stop here. I'll be happy to take questions, but I think, again, on behalf of the government of Uzbekistan, welcome everybody and hope you'll enjoy your time in Tashkent.
Thank you very much. Dr. Mahmoud, one of the things that you and I discussed before we came to the podium was the situation that member states are facing in the general economy. We have a very rosy picture here in Uzbekistan, but what about the rest of our member states, and what's the economic impact on them today?
Right. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. It's a great pleasure and honor to be part of this panel in this great country and this historic city of Tashkent. And it's great as well to see with one's eyes the beauty and the contribution of the civilization that was hosted in this country. And I see as well the determination and the optimistic, upbeat tone by the Deputy Prime Minister and, of course, our great speaker now. It's not a rosy picture. It's basically they have a very ambitious plan, and they are calling on all of us to help in this ambitious plan on investment. And what I have heard, investments are required, infrastructure, in human capital, because you need definitely investment in health and education and investments in resilience. But our moderator is challenging us with that big global question that goes beyond Uzbekistan and goes beyond as well the membership of OIC and the Islamic Development Bank. I think I have a slide somewhere. If it is there, that would be good to see it. But until it comes and surprises us on the screen, let me just go very quickly in the recent history. Yes, it's here, no surprises. I'll explain it. It's not an eye test, but I'll tell you the following. From the 1980s until 2007, our global economic system went through what's called great moderation. If you don't know anything about it, don't worry. It ended in 2007, 2008 with the global financial crisis. No great moderation anymore. This means the economic stability. This means low inflation rate. This means a stable economic activity. That after the 2007, 2008, we started to see the ups and downs. But then, with this period, we had what we call the great convergence. Countries like the membership of the OIC, including Uzbekistan, with higher growth, we can play the catch-up with the advanced economies. Unfortunately, because of COVID and what we heard just from the president of the Islamic Development Bank, there is a great divergence. And there is a way to see those complicated charts. The one at the bottom is not very complicated. I got it from the Islamic Development Bank. It's telling us exactly what the president of the group just mentioned, that there is a kind of diversion in the growth and a discrepancy in the growth. And what we need to see is basically countries to go beyond the 6%. Globally, the GDP is expected to grow by 6%, but the majority of the developing economies are going below 6% growth. Then you go to that other chart. If you are on the right of it, you are doing better than the global system, i.e. growing by more than 6%. You can really see that the majority of the developing economies and the members of the OIC countries or the Islamic Development Group, they are growing by less than 6%. And here is the divergence. You'll not really be doing what's required for the catch-up. Then you can see that chart from another way, from the bottom of it to the very top of it. Here you can really see that the majority of the members of the Islamic Development Bank Group are not really doing as good as those are at the top in terms of the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. Those who are doing well are the Nordic countries, some of the advanced economies, and the majority of the developing economies need to do a lot. Perhaps based on what we just heard, they need to invest more in human capital, invest more in infrastructure, including digitalization, and doing more and better in investment resilience. So it is great to have in this panel with us those who can really enable the business sector to do its job. Because the business sector, if it is for any reason, we appreciate the role of the business sector, again, of what the president of the Islamic Development Bank mentioned. They are the employers. It is not, with all due respect of the government representatives here, you are not the employers. I represent governments at the IMF. Governments employ only a small portion of the population. When it comes to growth for job opportunities, you need vibrant business sector. You need supported business sector. You need a business sector that is active, agile. And what you need today in this world, the world is full of uncertainty, lack of trust. So we need here two things. And it's great to see as well the opportunity perhaps to listen to His Excellency, the President of Uzbekistan today. Two things. From the leadership, political leadership, we need hope. Politicians, top politicians and leaders, as described by one of the French presidents, are traders in hope. And then, from the government sector, we need no surprises. Even a happy surprise in today's world, we need no surprises. We need stability. We need calm. We need to send the right signals, as perhaps the Deputy Prime Minister mentioned today. A very well articulated program to be shared with the business sector. Then, for those three elements of help and support to the business sector, you need de-risking through insurance. We need trade finance, because there is almost, in the case of developing economies in Africa, 1/3 of what's happening today is missing. There is a gap of whatever we do, we need more of. And we need empowerment of the business sector through development. So it is very important and relevant to have the three speakers with us today. Have more to say on this and the specifics on what the business sector could be provided by in terms of the help of the MDBs, including the Islamic Development Bank. And I said before, the beauty of the Islamic Development Bank, it can go to places that nobody else dares to go because of the higher risk, because of perhaps of the lower return. And as I was talking to one of the leaders of the business community around, it seems, based on what we saw in your reports and what the President of the Islamic Development Bank, it seems that you have the necessary products. So what is missing? Two things, and I've got a warning signal from our moderator. Two things are needed. You need scale of whatever you have today, you need more. And referring to one of the great business gurus is basically, you need the speed. I worked for the World Bank Group for 10 years, and I know in MDBs matters could be getting a bit complicated in terms of the time from the day that you start the deal and until you reach the implementation of it. So with this kind of mix, scale and speed, with the right products and with an able business sector willing to take the risk, you can really answer those big questions raised today in the case of Uzbekistan and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mahmoud. Brother Osama, one of the things that Dr. Mahmoud just raised with us was the importance of insurance. And certainly ISIC has played a critical role during this last 18 months of the crisis. Could you share with us some of your success in addressing the crisis and perhaps a little bit about how the reinsurance markets have supported your business activities?
I'm honored to be here in the presence of a very qualified panels, and always to follow Dr. Muhyiddin. It's a tough act to follow. But I would like to start by saying we need to first put into perspective the state of the economy that His Excellency, the President of IDB Group, has shared with us, and to take it into scale at the level of our member countries and to see the state that we are facing as institutions on the private sector. And from there we go into de-risking tools that are available through the group and that we are utilizing as ISIC and how we are reacting to that. The IMF, as it was mentioned, they have projected that the global economy will grow 6% in 2021 and 4.9% in the following year, 2022. While we are talking about emerging Asia and Africa, and this is where the core membership of the IDB group are located, are most adversely affected by the COVID. While the forecast for advanced economy is revised upwards for the next couple of years. Sub-Saharan Africa, where ISIC has a big chunk of its membership, is the world's slowest and recovering region because of the pandemic in 2021, and there's a risk of this region falling further behind in the global economic rebound and the recovery. And like I said, some 16 member countries for ISEC, they are in sub-Saharan Africa. We have to bring to the light here that rapid and equitable access to the COVID-19, which are today becoming a prerequisite for the full recovery of the global trade and FDI, especially in developing countries, is the hotspot that we have to look at, because we see the disparity in the equity when we are distributing the vaccine in the world. And the same thing, we have to bring into perspective the resurgence as well of the new variants and the Delta variant that we have right now. And we are seeing in many countries that we have some increase in the number of cases and the COVID. So we have to live with the fact that we are living with this COVID-19 for the foreseeable future. Let alone, I would like always to add to that, we are facing globally natural calamities that are unprecedented, and fires and floodings. We have fragility around the world, and at the same time we have, all this environmental crisis. All of it is happening at the same time, compounded with the COVID-19 pandemic that we are facing here. So the world is facing unprecedented risks and challenges that collectively we have to work together in order to do that. The trade definitely has been impacted heavily, and the World Trade Organization have shown us, while there is a marginal decline in the exports that have declined by 8%, but the service and trade, they contracted by 21% in 2020. So the recovery is expected to happen, but it is fragmented, and we are to anticipate that it's going to be affecting several parts of the world in a different way. At the operational level, as an institution, we always have to be very careful, and this is where ISEC maintain its resiliency, and we have to respond swiftly to the pandemic, but internally we have challenges in order to stay resilient. So we do that by doing vulnerability testing for member countries and non-member countries. We do the stress testing, and we track portfolio levels, and at the same time we implement defensive investment strategy. Secondly, when we talk about the credit insurance and investment insurance, the de-risking tools that we have to also agree that they are inextricably linked to the global trade and infrastructure development. Nothing moves in the world, even in good conditions, without insurance. Insurance is at the heart of the economy. Multilateral development financial institutions and multilateral insurance institutions that are specialized, like of ISEC and MIGA, Andaman and ATI, they have been extremely effective in creating innovative, cost-effective solutions throughout the pandemic in order for us to safeguard, this drastic changes that are happening in the economy. To go on the issue of our moderator that spoke about intra-trade, intra-trade is at the core of the mandate of the whole group. ISEC was born to enhance the intra-trade between the OIC member countries, similarly to ITFC, our sister entities. We have supported since inception close to $28 billion, which it is close to about 25% of the gross production and support that we have done since inception. And it is these transactions, they were supported, and here I would like to highlight where the business is being exported from and where the business is being imported to. The transactions supported, they are in Arab Asia, Central Asia, Southeast Asia, North Africa, West and Central Africa. And most of these exports, they originated from the Arab Asia, Europe and Central Asia, while Africa and Southeast Asia, where the majority of our member countries are, they remain the main destinations for intra-OIC imports. So there is a lot to be done there in us enhancing the export capabilities of Africa and South Asia. OIC, they target as well the intra-Islamic trade to reach 25% by the year 2025. At the group level and at ISEC level, we were very much confident that the above target, they are achievable and they are imminent to be happening at the level of the group, and we are going in the right direction for that. Looking ahead, we remain focused on achieving selective strategic objectives to best support the member countries through the pandemic but we focus here on the private sector that is key, and the SMEs that they have to be supported in order for us to have the proper job creations that is needed in order for us to rebound from the pandemic.
Thank you very much, Brother Osama. Engineer Hani, could you share with us some of the function that ITFC has taken to support the private sector and MSEs, in particular mitigating the COVID-19 impact, and what's some of the factors of recovery that you see?
What are some of the factors? Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I'm also very happy to say that to be here actually in this with this August gathering to talk actually about the private sector. I think the three entities that you see today were actually created in the beginning by the founders actually to recognize the important role that ITFC, ISEC and ICD, the important role of the private sector that is playing in the development process. So as far as the last and youngest organization, which is the ITFC, was created to complement actually the ISEC work and ICD, and also to synergize with the IDB group to really have an impact. We believed from the beginning that without really the role of the private sector, I think we will have some issues with development, and we will not really be able to have a full development plans, neglecting the private sector role in this. So from the beginning, ITFC has taken all the measures really to make sure that all our products that we have will be actually in line with the private sector needs. And as I said, and I would like to stress on that, to complement the other sisters organizations in terms of insurance and also supporting the other needs of the private sector, such as equity participation or sukuk issuance, where ICD is doing. You know, trade, as you all know, from the beginning of the pandemic, actually we felt that it was mostly affected, and I'm not going to go over the implications and the impact on trade, because it was mentioned in many figures before that. But what I'd like to say that from the beginning, ITFC felt it is really our role to keep the trade flowing, and that is very important, to keep the supply chain going, and that will lead us to more sustainable economies. Actually, this was not the first crisis that we go through, and I think crises always build muscles and makes you more stronger and resilient. And I think this is one of actually the crises that, despite of the high uncertainty, we were able actually to prove that also resilient and to continue to serve our member country is there. So my main concern from the beginning actually to internally to have really a strong also organization that can keep serving the Ummah. Number two is actually also support member countries to recover, and that's why we followed exactly the same design of the IDB group response program. So that's, we felt in the beginning we have to really respond to the pressing needs of member countries. We actually went to sectors that we were not actually focusing on in the beginning, especially the health sectors that can generate income and also keep jobs, like the tourism. And I'm sure that in this the figures that you have seen, these are the contribution of ITFC to the first R1, which is the response phase. But this will not really, the story is not ended here. We need to continue also during the restart and restructuring of the economies, also to provide support to member countries. The the only thing that we thought that internally we have to really make sure that we are able to face the new risk that is going to face ITFC just like other organizations, and have really a strong governance, and at the same time keep close relationship with our clients, because this is very, very important to really keep close. I feel very proudly that ITFC, just like other sister organizations, we serve member countries in bad times and in good times. And this is our role. This is how we distinguish ourselves from really being a simple financiers to a more of a development institution that will really have to balance between the financials and the improving lives of people. This is actually our logo: financing trade, improving lives. So we felt that we should really revisit our strategy that we had prepared in 2017, and alhamdulillah we found that the strategy was valid. However, we felt that we need really to focus more on the private sector. So there was an internal alignment by ITFC to really have the private sector more and more in the heart of all of our planning and providing what we can provide for the private sector in terms of financing. But we discovered as well that financing alone is not enough. You may provide financing to countries, and unfortunately the effectiveness of this development financing is not really will not be observed in a country that lacks capacity or lacks, for example, trained staff, or may need some advisory services. That's why we came up with the integrated solutions for the private sector, and especially for the SMEs. SMEs constitute 80% actually of the economic tissue of any country. They are the major income generating and employment for most of the countries. 60 to 70% are employed by actually SMEs. So with respect also to the major players, SMEs also play a major part. So that's why we said we need to devote integrated solutions for those SMEs, so they will be able to resist and be more resilient, and at the same time be able to solve some of the long-time issues like access to financing. We provided training to them, we provide capacity building to the SMEs, and we have very special programs like the ITFC SME Development Program. And that's why we felt it is very important for the SMEs to be able to actually to submit bankable projects to be able to continue serve. If these sectors stop, the whole economy will stop. That's why we see that countries have not spared any efforts in the past to really support the SME sectors by providing them not only, as I said, with all the what we heard this morning, all the support and the initiatives by the governments, but also development institutions as well have a part to play. So we have three things that we felt also we need to do. Actually support the health response as well, because this is of course how the whole thing started before it became an economical crisis. So that's why we felt that if we do improve our really intervention in the health sector, we will definitely be able to do something good for the private sector. Strengthening also the crisis management. We have really been advising from the beginning some private sectors of how to really cope up with this uncertain situation. As I said, we felt that any disruption to the supply chain will definitely have a big and major impact on take food, for example. We were really a little bit worried that some countries, the supply of foods during this crisis and travel ban and the lockdowns and all of this, how horrible it will be for nations who are heavily dependent on the outside, to procurement of their food supplies. So
Engineer Hani, thank you very much.
Okay.
We'll come back in a moment.
I'll come back again. Thank you very much. It's a very big topic, but we will, inshallah, come back again to you.
I think we could have a whole seminar with our dear brother. Brother Ayman, could you share with us a little bit about the work that ICD has done, particularly in developing networks of financial institutions and how your work has helped improve resilience in the private sector across member states.
Sure. Thank you very much. It's Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, as-salatu was-salam ala Sayyidina Muhammad. It's very exciting to be here in Uzbekistan. You feel the energy, and you definitely feel the future, and this energy is going to spread throughout our member countries, inshallah. And I really look forward to do much more business than we have already done in Uzbekistan, and looking forward for further businesses in all the CI countries and in our member countries around it. ICD provides different layers of services to our member countries. And during this pandemic, we have not stopped. Businesses continue doing their business. And at the same time, we will continue providing our services, and with all the energies that we have. And we have to always stay alert, fast, and quick, and flexible. So one of our biggest business lines that we have is sukuk issuance. Because there's trillions of dollars of liquidity in the markets, whereby we have the capability of providing sukuk in all kinds, whether they're for infrastructure or they're for existing projects, or we would go for green sukuks, and there will all of them be effective for SDGs. Another business line that we have is PPP, public-private partnership financing, that we have also not stopped during this pandemic period. And we believe that the markets will have to continue doing what they're doing in order for us not to have a standstill. And that's a very important lesson to keep in mind. The third business line that we have is corporate finance. This is what we call for the big cap or the large projects. Once we go to the SMEs, which are the vibrant and the energy and usually the blood flow of any economy, we have 119 financial institutions through which we have filtered our line of finance in order to reach to those SMEs at the ground. Our financial institutions are best located to know their clients on the ground. They know how to evaluate them best, know how to serve them best, and know how to fast act on what is needed. During this pandemic, we continued providing line of finance. We stood beside our financial institutions, and we made sure that they get provided all the support that is needed, so they stay strong. And whenever it was needed that we provide them equity, we were standing also beside them to make sure that they stay strong. So this gets me to the third business line that we provide is equity financing, or we provide equity direct investments, which is a very important aspect again. Even there is a pandemic, the opportunities continue to be there, and even during this unprecedented experience, we'll continue to actually be excited to be in our markets. Our member countries are very strong, and we believe that they have the capabilities to actually grow out much stronger out of this pandemic than ever before. So I believe that we should continue being very strong and resilient. Last but not least, we have our product called BRAVE product, which is actually supporting some of member countries that are in very fragile state and are in war zones. In our belief that even though it's such difficult environment that we are in, we should be able to support our member countries. And we should be able to support our SMEs, because during this time period, if you don't do so, it will take a country at least 20 to 30 years to rebuild all their businesses. So altogether, we look forward for the energy of our member countries to be stronger and get out of this pandemic stronger than ever before. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Brother Atabak, when we were talking just a little bit earlier, you mentioned your involvement with the development of about $1 billion fund for alternative investment. Could you share a little bit about what that's going to do and what we should be expecting?
Uzbekistan Direct Investment Fund is a newly created vehicle to provide alternative non-classical banking investments to companies in Uzbekistan across the sectors, across the sizes, and in the year of kind of post-pandemic COVID economy it is extremely important that we find a way to reach out to companies so that they can maintain their sustainability, they can be competitive in future economy. And number one priority for us also is to ensure that employment and job creation is a priority. And I'm sure this is also in minds of many policymakers in member countries of the Islamic Development Banking Group, because as my colleagues have just described, the situation with pandemic have caused a lot of businesses to go through difficulties. Many businesses have been going out of business. So number one priority for the government, in my view, is to ensure that we provide necessary support and financial resources to ensure that the economy stay in good shape. So with regards to the product, we're designing alternative products, non-classical banking products, so they could be available and accessible by very small businesses and large businesses. And in this case, we're also looking into creating what we would call the Islamic financing qualified products. Unfortunately, in Uzbekistan, we do not have yet a law that would govern Islamic financing, but as some people know, we are working on regulation. For example, Sukuk, this is something I was personally involved with my brothers at the Islamic Development Bank to introduce new laws on Sukuk. But the idea is risk sharing. So for us as Uzbekistan Direct Investment Fund, priority is to demonstrate to the private sector, to the vibrant private sector, who will be driving the growth in the future, that we're willing to share the risk with investor community. We have limitations. It's about 30% per project per exposure, but given our capital size of $1 billion, I think we can mobilize additional investment of perhaps additional $3 billion from our partners, both international and domestic, and finding a way to get that capital into the economy. And we're looking forward to ensure that our capital is long-term. We have some models where we try to engineer even permanent capital financing. There's a separate session later this afternoon at 3 o'clock, and myself and my colleagues will talk more about that. But the key, I think, just to kind of summarize on our objectives, is to make sure, number one, that we provide support to the private sector. We don't want to compete with the private sector, but we want to be complementary to the private sector. And we need to be able to identify entrepreneurs, businesswomen, businessmen, who are able to, with their innovation, with their creativity, to really help us to transform Uzbekistan economy and be able to create jobs that probably no one would thought about, 15, 20, 30 years ago. We also, by the way, will be paying a lot of attention to finance education, because we believe that supporting education and innovation is fundamental to transform the economy and take the economy to a different level. We all know, as I said, maybe just to my kind of final remarks, unfortunately, employment situation is an issue. The jobs that many people were able to get the skills for 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago are becoming different, with technology playing a different role, and particularly for emerging economies like Uzbekistan, who are lagging behind when it comes to regulatory framework, rule of law. We have to do a lot of work. We have to do a lot of work. So we hope that this period will give us a chance to rethink how we structure our economy and come up with alternative financing instruments to support that innovation.
Thank you very much. Very inspiring, very optimistic. We look forward to hearing more as the day goes on and the years go by. Dr. Mahmoud, could you share with us a little bit your views on the role of the international development banks on supporting the private business sector?
Right. First, it starts at home. And as we heard, it's very much important for the state itself to set its priorities for supporting the business sector. The biggest of the private sector enterprises cannot compete with the state, even if the state has a small economy or belongs to the low-income countries. The state owns the land, has the regulations, and nobody can compete with the state if the state gets into this kind of unhealthy competition with the business sector. So the starting point really is to have clearly the priorities of the state outlined. You need to have a kind of a white paper with clear traffic lights. Where are the green areas for business? Where are the areas that the state doesn't wish the business sector to be in? And where are the areas that could really be subject to public-private partnership? Here, the international development finance institutions, including the Islamic Development Bank, can be of help. As we have seen, the MDBs, or the multilateral development banks, can provide finance, can provide de-risking instruments, can provide, in many cases, as we have heard, what is more important and more valuable than money, which is knowledge sharing and technical assistance. And then all of these MDBs can really be of great help in matters of high risk and uncertainty to provide assurances to the market and the market participants. Everybody today is talking about building back better, building forward better, or as we have seen with the 3 R's of the Islamic Development Bank. They all mean the same. But at the end, countries will be behaving differently based on the willingness of the state to do the right job, based on what the private sector in the state, within the state, including the domestic and the foreign, be in healthy partnership, and third, to what extent the state can really mobilize the international development banks community to provide the necessary support. The emphasis on the small and medium enterprises, as we have listened from the 3 speakers from the Islamic Development Bank Group, cannot be overemphasized. They are the major employers, and in each of the multilateral development banks you see a program to support the SMEs. But again, without the priorities provided by the state itself to the SMEs, and this should start by good data, good information, and good competition policy. And that means really to have this kind of a revision. If you have a competition policy that is 2 or 3 years old, it's not relevant today, because the state is intervening further in the economic activities. So we need really to have this kind of rule of engagement clear to everybody, domestic before foreign, because you cannot attract foreign direct investment while your incumbent businesses are suffering. Then the final point is basically the need to be pragmatic in a fast-changing world. What you are planning for today needs really to put into consideration the fast digitalization and the need to be resilient to the major challenges and risks facing us, including climate change and the requirements to achieve the SDGs before the deadline. Thank you.
Thank you. Unfortunately, I'm informed that because of the change in timetable for the President's visit, that we'll be cutting it short. If I could just ask maybe if we could present the slides briefly for the 3 private sector entities and give our CEOs just a short moment to explain the slides, and then you'll be asked to move to the next meeting room for the President's visit. So if we could put the I6 slide up first, I think. So if we could have the slides for IDB Group, please. So just we have briefly the slide. Finish? Okay. Continue? Okay. Okay. Dr. Osama, if you could just share your views on this particular slide.
Okay.
I think it's very important for our
Thank you, Thomas. This is a new change in the the private sector there, where we thought that we share a slide for each of the institution that depict something out of the present situation that we are living. For ISEC, we have chosen a young lady that she's, studying online. This is something that is close to home. We're working from home. We're seeing our families through the screen, even if they are a block away. Similarly, we're working with our customers, and we're seeing conferences and webinars. And this is to say that the COVID-19, it shows us some shortcomings in the systems that we are facing. Not just these shortcomings, they happened in respect of the trade that we are talking about today, and the PRI that we are supporting, the foreign direct investment. It shows as well that telecommunication is becoming integral to everything that we can do going forward. Studying, remotely for our kids, doing, things that are happening today physically, and we're glad to do this, but we will continue to use the technology. We have identified that fragility has hit, because of the pandemic, the telecommunication sector, and this is why ISEC, has engaged member countries in that respect. We've been very much engaged here in Uzbekistan. We have done a few deals on telecommunication since 2020, the pandemic started, and we have done a few deals as well with our partners, Huawei, in different parts of the world, and specifically in Indonesia. So this is something that we believe that we have to ponder upon, and to see about digitization going forward, how important it is for us, and what is needed for us as countries, as policymakers, and as users as well, in order to conform to the new norm.
Thank you very much, Dr. Osama. Ladies and gentlemen.
Just one announcement.
Okay. So we just have a brief announcement.
Colleagues who have green badges are invited to come through this door to a next event that starts 1 o'clock with the head of state. And the other colleagues who don't have badges could walk out from the door to the left. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, Your Excellencies, our apologies for this session being cut short due to the protocol. We would like very much to thank you for your time. We ended on a very interesting note about digitalization, and we're going to lose an opportunity to learn a little bit the deep thoughts of Engineer Hani, but I recommend that you look for our colleagues, Engineer Hani and Brother Ayman, Brother Osama, throughout the event, and discuss with them some of the important learnings that they can share with you to develop resilience in overcoming our current situation. Join me in a round of applause for our panel.